welcome to Mentour, yet another video podcast. I hope you're all doing fantastic. So, today on the podcast I'm going to be talking about public announcements, PAs. How to do them, who does them, what do we think about when we have to make a PA during an emergency, for example, or a non-normal situation. Stay on to the end, guys, because even though PA sounds boring at the outset, it is actually fairly interesting, and if you are going to get into this line of work, it is a really important skill to have. So keep tuned, I promise you, you won't regret it. So a PA, a public announcement, is an essential safety tool. Now we use it, we as the flight crew use it to keep information flowing from that little locked room up in the front back to all of the passengers in the back. Now, I cannot overemphasize how important it is to make sure that everyone in the back is always informed about what's going on. When people are not informed about what's happening around them, people start to make up their own kind of idea and their own picture of reality. So if you've had a long delay, and I'm sure most of you guys who are watching this have had a delay inside of an aircraft, you know what happens when the pilot does not give information for a long while. People start to talk to each other, you know, people start to whisper, I wonder what I'm sure we have some kind of technical delay, I wonder what this is, and it starts to spread, okay. This is not something we want. What we want is we want to make sure that everyone is involved in what's going on, so that there's no question mark. That way people are much more happy. So we use the PAs that way, and once again, I'm sure that all of you have had the sensation of sitting inside of a cabin, trying to listen to, you hear that something is going on in the PA, but you can just hear some mumbling, and everyone is kind of, you know, trying to hear what is he or she saying, and you cannot make out the words, all right? The reason for this is that at the moment we're not putting enough emphasis on practicing making good PAs. To make a good PA is actually kind of like an art form, all right? It's something that requires planning, training, a good thought behind it. So what I'm going to start by doing is just giving you some pointers on how to make a good PA, what you need to think about, all right? So to make a good PA, you need to have a plan, first of all. You need to know what you're going to say. If you are really experienced, you might be able to wing it, you might be able to kind of make your PA up as you go along. But the likelihood is that if you have a lower experience, you need to have some kind of structure to keep to. So what I always emphasize and what I always tip up my guys to do is have a PA for a given situation. For example, your en route PA, that you follow the same structure all the time, but you just change things like weather, arrival time, destinations, and things like that. That way you will not stutter, you won't, you know, kind of fall over yourself as you're making the PA. But there's a backside to that technique, and the backside to that technique is that whenever you do something out of memory, whenever you do something kind of on autopilot, you tend to do things quicker and quicker as you get more and more experienced. Now, this is a no-no. You cannot do this, because essentially, if I was speaking to you guys, if I was sitting here and you were sitting opposite to me, I could speak fairly quickly because you would be able to see my mouth, you'd be able to see my facial expressions, and you see my body language. And that way I can give you information really quickly, because there's a lot of ways that you can input the data. With a PA, that's not the case. With a PA, you will only hear my voice and you won't be able to see anything of the rest, which means that to make a good PA, you need to speak slowly. All right? You need to speak slowly, you need to really articulate the words, and you need to speak at the proper volume. If you're not doing that, it will only sound like a mumble in the back. And people, normally most people, they do want to listen to what you have to say. So have a plan of what you're going to say. Take the mic up, and this is another mistake that people do. The mic needs to be very close to your mouth, okay? So the technique that I use myself is I rest the PA mic on my chin. That way the actual mic is only about 1.5 centimeters away from my mouth when I speak. I go over to the audio control panel and I select PA and I turn up the volume. That way I'll be able to hear my own voice in the PA channel, and I can judge whether or not I'm speaking loud enough so people can hear, because it differs between different aircraft. Some aircraft, the PA audio volume will be very high, and some aircraft it will be very low. So you might need to change your volume a bit, how much you speak. Sorry, how loud you speak. So when I start speaking, I speak much slower, or I try to speak much slower than I would normally, especially if it's something important I have to say. Don't be afraid to make pauses inside of the PA. So if you're saying something important, articulate it, emphasize this like I'm doing now, and leave a pause afterwards. So what would be an example of that? An example would be, for example, let's say that we have been given a really long ATC slot delays. If you want to know what the slot delay is, then look at my previous video about airline slots and delays. Right, so let's say that ATC has contacted us and they've said that unfortunately you have a slot in 2 hours. Right, the way I would make that PA is, first of all, I would talk to the cabin crew. Always, if you're going to do something that involves the passengers and something that they need to do, then always inform the cabin crew first so they are aware of what you're going to say. So then I will take the PA up, I will take a minute or so to think through what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to start making the PA. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain. Unfortunately, we have been informed by air traffic control that we've been issued with so-called Atc Slot Restriction. What that means is that the skies over Europe along our route is a little bit crowded at the moment. So instead of having us waiting en route, we've been given a specific takeoff time. Now that takeoff time is in about an hour and a half from now. So we are going to have to sit and wait for up to 1.5 hours before we can make our way. Now, me and my colleague are working really hard up here in the front to try to convince air traffic control that we're ready to go, which means that we're trying to improve the situation. But right now, it looks like we're going to have to sit and wait here for a while. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch off the seatbelt sign, and you will be able to use the toilets. You'll be able to use your mobile phones to call your relatives and tell them that you're going to be a little bit late. But, and this is very important, if I switch the seatbelt sign back on again, it means that we have got an improvement on the slot and we might have to start moving very, very shortly. So if you hear the seatbelt sign go back on, and it sounds like this, and I'll demonstrate it, then I need you to get back into your seats, sit down, put your seatbelt sign on and switch off your mobile phones as quickly as possible, because you might have to move very quickly to avail of the new slot time. I'll give you more information as the time progresses. Thank you. So that would be an example of a PA that I would make more or less for a slot delay. And as you can see, I try to emphasize the important points, like for example what the passengers need to do, what they can do, and so on. And then as the slot time progresses, even if I don't have any more information, every at least 15 or 20 minutes, probably around 15 minutes, I will go back out and make a new PA, just telling passengers that we still have the same slot time, there's no update, we're working on trying to improve it. Because no information is actually a kind of, no information in the form of a PA is actually information. They will know that we're working on it, so they won't be, starting to get frustrated, because you really quickly get frustrated without information. Okay, so that's one example of a PA. Now, who does the PAs? Well, it's going to be the captain who does the welcome and PA all the time. Right. The reason for that is because it's important that the captain establishes his or her voice to the passengers. So in case of, for example, an emergency evacuation or a really important PA announcement, the passengers will recognize the voice of the commander and hopefully listen to it. When it comes to who does the PA in flight, it varies. It's the captain's responsibility that they're being made. However, he or she can delegate it to the first officers to make the PAs as well. And what we tend to do is the one who is pilot flying on the leg that is being flown tends to be the one making the PA. So now you know that. The person who's doing the PA en route is generally the one who's going to land the aircraft. When it's emergency situations, it tends to be the captain who does it as well, for the same reason that I just mentioned. And when we're talking about emergency PA, so PAs that happens if we have a non-normal situation, it's even more important that you really emphasize what you're saying, and that you have a plan of what you're going to say before you say it, right? So once again, in case we have a non-normal situation, our first priority is always to fly the aircraft. So we aviate, we navigate, and then we communicate, which means that the communication bit will happen once we have everything under control, the checklists are being more or less done, we have a plan of what we're going to do, we've discussed the plan amongst each other. And also, the first thing I will do before I make a PA is I'm going to have a briefing with my cabin crew where I outline what's going on. I take their impressions about what the situation is in the cabin, and then depending on what he or she says, I will then modulate, change the PA depending on the current situation. When I make the PA, there are a couple of things that are really important. First of all, we do not give a lot of technical information because it's not for any help. Most people will not understand the technical information anyway, so we're not going to go into much depth. But never ever lie to passengers. Don't tell them that you're diverting because of bad weather when there's a technical malfunction, for example. So tell them, but don't get into too much detail. Also, always avoid words like emergency, like fire, like we've lost an engine. Anything like that is going to most likely make more damage than good to the passengers. Okay, they do not want to hear that we've had an engine fire, for example. What we tend to tell them is that we've had a technical malfunction of the aircraft that requires engineering attention. So for the safety of the aircraft, we are going to divert, or we're going to land at XYZ airport. I want you to follow my cabin crew's instructions, and I will give you more information about your ongoing travel once we get down on the ground. So we have the companies working on providing you with alternate travel. More information about that once we've landed. And we're going to land in approximately 15 to 20 minutes from now. Something like that. What you do by that is a couple of things. First of all, you're showing the passengers that someone is in charge, right? That the captain is still up there, he or she is doing what they're supposed to, and by the tone of your voice, which is supposed to be calm and supposed to be constructive like this, they will also know that, he or she sounds quite calm, so this is probably not that bad. So that calms the situation down. Also, they will know that you have a plan, they will know what's going on, more or less, and you have also empowered your cabin crew. So you've told them to listen to the cabin crew, because the cabin crew's main and in this situation, sole purpose is to be the safety personnel inside of the cabin. Okay, so it's really important that the cabin crew has the authority from the captain to do their job in a good way. The third thing that you've done is that you have kind of taken their attention away from what's going on, the failure that's going on, and focused it on what's going to happen once we've landed. So we're going to divert, so I wonder if we're going to get buses, or I wonder how late we're going to be. And that's what you want. You want the passengers to be focusing on what's happening after the landing. You don't want them to focus on whatever is going on right now, because that will just bring them more anxiety, right? So you see that there is a clear thought behind this, and it's extremely important that you have a good and clear picture and plan of what you're going to say, and the way that you are going to make a PA, and this goes for all PAs that you ever make. The way you make the PA is going to reflect how your crew and how your company is being perceived by the traveling public. So you know that I have in previous podcasts been emphasizing the fact that you need to dress well, that you need to be, you need to keep the dress code going, you need to keep your uniform neat and so on, because you want to project that image of the airline. Well, a PA is kind of the audio equivalent of your uniform. The way you make a PA is going to give a lasting impression of on the passengers on how they perceive your entire airline. Alright, so if you make a good PA, a welcoming, a positive, and a nice PA that people can hear properly, they will go away with a much more positive feeling about your airline. Alright, so this is why it's important, guys, that you think about this when it comes to your PAs. Don't be nervous, you know. You can practice this at home and everything, but do try to make good quality PAs because it will be worth it. Okay? Good. That's all I have to say about PAs, guys. If you have more questions, as always, post them below. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Share the channel with everyone that you think might like it. And also, I want to emphasize, guys, that you can still buy my my virtual reality application. Mentour 360 is available both on App Store and Google Play Store. It's getting great reviews. We have 5 stars all over the world, actually. And if you really want to join me in the flight deck and see how I operate together with my colleague, then I would definitely recommend you to get this app. And if you really want a truly immersive kind of experience, then get into www.mentor360.com and get yourself a pair of these really simple VR glasses. They're good for what they do. Guys, have a fantastic day. I hope I see you in my upcoming podcast, which is going to come quite soon. And yeah, that's it, guys. So have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.